Chapter 3. Farak soared high over the northern plains, the cold air rushing across his molten scales. The frigid temperatures failed to dull the anger coursing through his veins. Only the thrill of combat could do that. He craved the clash of fang and claw, the bright bite of pain, the hot rush of violence. Today Farak would draw blood from a Ridicron's stone hide. The word on the wind said that a Ridicron had guided Razagath through the rituals necessary to become imbued with the primal elements. The fact that she had survived the process spoke to the strength of her connection to storm magic, for hundreds of others had perished in the attempt before Farak's own success. It wasn't that Farak minded adding a third incarnate to their ranks. Oh no. They need more incarnates if they meant to face the aspects on the battlefield. Farak was furious because Iridikron hadn't even consulted him on the matter. How bold of him, Farak thought, as if I were a mere pawn and he the unquestionable leader. He swooped lower as he drew closer to Iridikron's den of Harrow's Deep. In the south, Galakron's monstrous bone ribs arched into the sky. Though the beast had been dead for more than 10 years, scraps of flesh still clung to his bones, flailing in the breeze. The stench from his flesh only stoked the fires of Farak's anger. Galakron reminded Farak of Alexstrasza's victory and Riot's dragon aspect. Too many dragons had chosen to follow his cousin into folly. Even Tyranostraz, the ancient and righteous Wyrm, had chosen Alexstrasza over his primal nature. Directly to the south, a new Titan abomination took shape, rising in the shadow of Galakron's fall. Farak's scouts said that the aspects were to name this tower Wyrmrest Temple. To Farak's eye, the tower was even more monstrous than the stinking pile of Galakron's bones. No doubt the aspects would use the place to spy on the primal dragons. Farak wanted to scorch it to the ground, but Iridikron had forbidden him from attacking the ordered outright. Do not alarm the aspects, Iridikron had said. The less they suspect, the better. Farak had scoffed at the idea. Rather than wait and watch, the incarnates needed to strike at Valdrakken now, before the aspects' dragonflights grew any larger and more powerful. The fifth and final Oathstone had been empowered in Nozdormu's bastion of Theladris last spring, and Farak had heard of the changes the Oathstones wrought in the flights. By all reports, the Ordered were stronger now and more unified. Rumors of their strength drew more dragons to the Broodlands. No matter, hundreds of primal dragons already joined Farak's cause, as had thousands of Terrasek, the small bipedal dragonkind native to the Dragon Wilds. If he and Iridikron flew on Valdrakken, Farak was certain they would crush Alexstrasza and her allies with their combined might. And yet Iridikron had insisted they wait. Farak hated that so many of his allies turned to Iridikron for leadership. If anyone had the right to lead their movement, it was he. Farak had been the first to speak out against Alexstrasza and the aspects, the first to survive being suffused by elemental energies, and the one who had rallied a rapidly growing force of primal dragons to the cause. He deserved to lead the growing rebellion, not Iridikron, which was exactly why Farak had flown north from his lair in the caldera. If Iridikron wanted to lead, he would have to take the right by wing and by talon. Farak would not simply bow to Iridikron's whims, even if Iridikron had been the one to discover how to imbue oneself with the elemental energies in the first place. One massive craggy peak speared the sky, standing taller than any other mountain in the whole range, Harrow's Deep. At its base, Farak spotted the mouth of a familiar cavern, one encrusted with glittering ice and snow. Iridikron had dug tunnels far into the world's crust, allowing him to absorb the element of stone unhindered. It was said the earth itself now responded to the stone-scaled's mastery. A formidable foe, to be sure, but Farak feared no dragon. Farak landed in the snow, which melted and hissed beneath his feet. Two primal dragons, each with mottled gray scales, stood guard at the cavern's entrance. I'm here to see Iridikron, he said to the guards. His breath plumed around his snout. Take me to him. The two dragons shared a look. No, blazing one, the first replied in his underdeveloped speech, cocking his head. Stone-scaled busy. Iridikron will make time for me, Farak said. The dragon narrowed his eyes. No, he busy. Farak stepped forward, scales blazing. A column of fire swirled around him, melting the snow in 2 wingspan diameters and desiccating the earth below his feet. The two primal dragons stumbled back, dropping their heads to protect their throats. They ruffled the protective scales around their shoulders and backed away, smelling of sharp, coppery fear. Farak scoffed. He would snuff out the sparks of their lives with a single swipe of his talons. Do you think I cower before your master? Farak said, stepping towards the cavern. It is because of me he discovered how to attain his power. Without me he would not be the stone-scaled. Step aside or I will return you to the ground which you desperately cleave. The interior of Harrow's Deep had changed since Farak had seen it last. The main cavern yawned wider and higher than before, and the air smelled of sulfur and smoke. Hundreds of stalactites hung from the ceiling, toothy and sharp. A circular sinkhole dominated the floor, twisting down into tunnels and warrens. Farak thought the sinkhole might be 10 wingspans wide, maybe more. A new waterfall tumbled through it, plunging hundreds of talon lengths into a dark pool at the bottom. Stepping inside Hera's Deep felt like walking into the maw of a giant predator. It left Farak feeling ill at ease. He shook off the feeling with a growl. The guards were right, Farak thought, stalking toward the edge of the sinkhole, stone-scaled busy. Everywhere he looked, Hera's Deep bustled with activity. Primal dragons excavated new tunnels, Terraseks scurried about, carting supplies to and fro. Shouts echoed, and metal rang on metal. Farak narrowed his eyes. What was Iridikron planning without him this time? You there, Farak said, gesturing to a small pack of Terrasek with a talon. One of them squeaked and dropped the hide-wrapped package it was carrying. Tell me where Iridikron is, now. The Terrasek pointed shaking talons to a large mouth tunnel at the base of the sinkhole. With a growl, Farak dived off the ledge and plummeted towards the blue water at the bottom. The waterfall spray evaporated against the heat of his scales. Farak alighted on a ledge below the waterfall. The sulphurous smell grew stronger here, acrid enough to make his eyes water. He followed a tunnel into the earth. Phosphorus green mushrooms grew along the ceiling, providing little light. The deeper Farak went, the more the tunnels tightened. He bristled every time his wings scraped the walls. The ground trembled underfoot, shaken by unseen forces. Bits of rock and dust hit his scales, giving him the uncomfortable reminder of just how deep he was beneath the surface. Farak wasn't meant to be underground like this, trapped like some lesser beast, the bright fires in his belly smothered. Perhaps he had been brash to think he could challenge Iridikron in his seat of power, but he wasn't about to turn back. Not now. When Farak emerged into a wide cavern, some of the tension in his chest unspooled. Unlike the upper cavern, this place had no natural light. Instead, great fires burned in clawed braziers, casting shadows across the wall. The air felt humid and damp. Droplets of water dripped off the ends of stalactites. Massive pillars bore the weight of the mountain, their forms twisted and bulbous. If the upper cavern was the maw of the beast, Farak was now in the creature's belly. Iridikron's voice rumbled through the room, his words indecipherable. Farak turned his head, following the stone-skilled's voice. To monitor the aspect's progress, Iridikron said as Farak drew closer. Neltharion builds a fortress along the western border of the Broodlands. We must infiltrate the new construction and design an ingress point, preferably underground. Iridikron stood in a small chamber surrounded by 7 or 8 of his winged leaders. Since being imbued with primal earth energies, Iridikron's scales had hardened to stone. The incarnate had doubled in size and towered over the other dragons in the room, a mountain among the foothills. Amber earth energies seeped out of the fissure on his back, reminding Farak of volcanoes that could crack the earth open. Iridikron's every movement made the ground shudder. As Farak stepped into the cavern, the stone-scaled turned his bright, piercing gaze on him. The other primal dragons swiveled their heads, looking askance at Farak. Iridikron stood before a strange stone slab, one with features Farak thought he recognized, just in miniature. Farak frowned. Were these not the mountains of Haladris? And that depression there, did that not symbolize the Emerald Plains? Though Farak hadn't spent much time in the Broodlands, he still recalled its prominent features. It was clear Iridikron was plotting something without Farak again. I do not recall inviting you to this meeting, Iridikron said, annoyed. He tapped the map of the Broodlands with a talon. It sank into the stone floor with a rumble. I need no invitation, Farak spat, stepping into the room. I will have an audience with Iridikron. You have no right to barge into my keep and demand an audience, Iridikron replied. I have business to conduct, and we will speak later. No, we will speak now, Farak said. I was the first incarnate across the breach, the first to succeed. I will not bow to you, Iridikron. One of Iridikron's wing leaders turned on Farak with a growl. A second joined the first, fangs flashing. Without a word, the stone scale drew himself up to his full height. He thumped his tail on the ground, sending shivers through the floor. The 2 wing leaders looked to Iridikron and bowed their heads. While Farak would not be cowed, he was a dragonborn of fire and fury, not some spineless lackey. You hide in your lair, using the power I helped you attain to build a fortress, rally an army, and craft your little schemes, which you keep from everyone, even those who you owe allegiance, Farak said with a snarl. A sharp pebble pricked the bottom of his foot, yet another. Farak shook out one foot and continued, That was not your knowledge alone to share, especially with one as unpredictable as Razageth. The stone-scaled said nothing. He watched Farak with an unsettling intensity, unmoving, unblinking. His refusal to speak only buffeted the flames of Farak's fury. This is just like you, Farak continued, fire now spouting from his tongue. All you do is watch, wait. We should have engaged the aspects before they started turning our kind into more of those Titan abominations. You counsel patience while you hide in your den, allowing the aspects to grow stronger by the day. You are a fool, Eridicron. At the word fool, the stone-scale's glowing eyes narrowed. His wing leaders went still. One of them looked upon Farak with pity, but he ignored it, just like he ignored the trembling ground beneath his feet. One thing you must learn about me, Farak, Eridicron said softly, tilting his head a few degrees to the left, is that I prefer my enemies unseeing, unaware of my full strength, until it is much too late. A great weight settled across Farak's shoulder blades. He shifted, shuffling his wings, joints creaking. He tried to lift his feet, but to his horror he could not feel or move them. Farak looked down. The floor softened beneath him, as if turned to mud. His feet sank into the rock, which grew solid once more. As the gray stone began to swallow up his shins, his heart skipped a beat. Panicked, he tried to tug himself free. When he attempted to flap his wings to generate lift, the floor held him fast. The fury coursing through Farak's veins cooled the fear. What? He gasped, struggling in his stony shackles. Eridicon, you would lift Talon against me? Me, your brother? And the very spark of your success? Saying nothing, Eridicon stalked forward, eyes slitted, his wing leaders scattered before him. The great energies along the stone-scaled spine blazed ever brighter. Do you truly think I hide here in Harrow's Deep, ignorant of the threat growing in the east? He asked quietly. Let me go, Farak managed, nearly choking on the words. A gorge grew in his throat, making him feel as though he had swallowed a stone. Was that also the stone-scaled's power, or merely his own debilitating fear? He tossed his head, trying to break free of Eridicron's trap. Still the fire dragon sank lower, till stone constricted his ribs and his breath. Farak was going to die here, far from the sky, and starving for air. He gasped, eyes bulging, heart shuddering, yet he could not draw enough air to satisfy his need. His flames withered, and the heat in his body dwindled. Fire has the power to cleanse the world, but only molten stone has the power to shape it, Eridicron said. We cannot face the aspects as we are, and your wanton belligerence will prove no match for one such as Neltharion. Our new movement needs someone to temper it, mold it, bone it. Do you understand? Darkness edged Farak's sight. He was drowning, dying. Yes, he rasped. Good, Eridicron said, tapping a single talon on the floor. The stone released Farak, who collapsed to the ground and sucked in a deep, greedy breath. When the air hit his lungs, it sent him into a coughing fit, belching smoke and ash. Hot tears leaked from his eyes, and he clawed at the earth as his muscles spasmed. Do not mistake me, Farak, Eridicron said. Your fiery rhetoric will convince many to the nobility of our cause, as it did me. But you do not have the temperament to lead. Farak lifted his head to meet Eridicron's gaze. From wingtip to wingtip, every part of him ached. He swallowed hard, wincing at the rough rasp of air in his throat and lungs. Follow me, Eridicron said. Together you and I shall put an end to the aspects and their titan defilement. I swear to you this day I will not allow them to drive our kind to the brink of extinction. Farak wasn't sure why he said yes. Perhaps he was surprised Eridicron let him live. Perhaps the last 20 or 30 heartbeats had given him a newfound respect for the stone scale. Or perhaps all Farak had wanted was an assurance that the incarnates would not disregard the aspect's tyranny, that Eridicron meant to do something with the power Farak had helped him to attain. Come, Eridicron said, moving towards the cavern door. Let's see how our sister has fared. As Farak and Eridicron flew, the skies over northern Stormscale Mountains roiled with thick, purple-black clouds, turning the day to darkest night. An enormous cyclone churned across the landscape. Bright blue bolts of lightning danced through the storm, illuminating the clouds from within. Farak could taste the energy from the bolts on his tongue. Its current crackled along his scales. The winds howled, trying to pull him into their restless maelstrom. In all his years, Farak had never seen such a terrible squall. It left a wide trail of destruction in its wake, tearing a deep gash in the valley floor, uprooting trees and sending animals fleeing. And yet there was something thrilling about witnessing such a wanton display of power. Razageth's strength and ability was undeniable. Perhaps Eridicron was right to choose her to be the third incarnate. Razageth's laugh boomed through the heavens, intoxicating with elemental power. These winds will snap the wings from our backs, Eridicron called to Farak. Come, let us take shelter in stone. Eridicron tucked his wings close to his body and dived towards a nearby mountain peak. Despite what had happened just hours before, Farak would be glad to have the mountain's unshakable stone beneath his feet. He folded his wings and followed, landing atop a nearby mountain beside Eridicron. Look at her, Eridicron said, his voice brimming with pride. Is Razageth not magnificent? Is she not the very pinnacle of what our kind can achieve? How could our brethren turn to the keepers when everything we need is already within our grasp? I do not know, Farak replied, turning his face skyward, but this schism that divides our kind must be ended. All dragons should be free, not just from the Titan's edicts, but from Alexstrasza's false reign. Eridikron was silent for a moment, watching the storm rage before them. He turned to Farak. "In fight we shall. All I ask for is your trust. No, your patience, which I know is in short supply." Eridikron snorted, lifting his gaze back to the storm. "We will put an end to the aspects and their masters, but we must approach the coming battle with strategy and care, and I am reluctant to strike as long as Tira still lives. We cannot know the full extent of the magic the keepers have granted the aspects, but they are no longer the dragons we once knew." "Luckily, neither are we," Farak said. Before Redicron could reply, a massive bolt of lightning shot from the heavens, shaking the earth and gashing open the clouds. A column of sunlight dropped into the storm. The light fell upon a dragon Farak no longer recognized. White-blue lightning now danced around Razageth's back, leapt across her wings, and sparked from her eyes. Her once mottled, dull scales now gleamed purple-black, the same color as the clouds that swirled around her. Razageth was the embodiment of the storm, imbued with all the wrath and brutality of the sky's fiercest tempest. "If we mean to face the aspects," the Ridicron told Farak, "we will need at least one more." "Who?" Farak asked, cocking his head. "Few dragons have the strength, will, instinct, and determination to survive the process of being imbued with the elements." "I can think of one other, one whose presence among us would pierce Alexstrasza's heart like a talon," Eridikron replied. "But that concern is for another day. Come, Farak, let us congratulate our sister on her ascension."